Ms. Mosby, how do you feel about this split verdict?
Marilyn Mosby is found guilty on one of 2 counts of federal mortgage fraud. We're live breaking down everything that happened in the courtroom today and how much jail time Mosby is facing now. An audit reveals Maryland's poorest schools are not getting the funding they need. Fox 45 News Project Baltimore investigates why millions of dollars intended for your kids' education is not being spent. Fox 45 News finds more than 20 nonprofits receiving thousands from the city are still not in compliance with the state, months after our report exposing those groups first broke. We're demanding answers about how your tax dollars are being spent. A budget crisis in Cecil County schools sparks a gathering by the hundreds. We take you inside tonight's rally as parents demand funding for their children's education.
These cuts would be devastating.
Live from WBFF in Baltimore, this is Fox 45 News at 10.
Ms. Mosby, how do you feel about this split verdict?
Leave alone. Leave alone.
Ms. Mosby, are you happy with the decision to take the stand?
No comment. No comment. No comment. No comment. You done enough. Thank you.
Former Baltimore City State's Attorney Marilyn Mosby staying silent after being found guilty of 1 count of mortgage fraud. After a full day of deliberation, the jury finding Mosby lied on the mortgage application for the home she purchased in Longboat Key, Florida, but not on the application for the home in Kissimmee. Today's conviction comes after a guilty verdict in November to 2 counts of perjury. Good evening, everybody. I'm Mary Bubala. Now the city's former top prosecutor awaits her sentence in both cases. Fox 45's Mackenzie Frost was in court today as the verdict was read and joins us now with the very latest. Mackenzie.
Yeah, Mary, today's verdict came after more than 3 weeks of this trial and 6 hours of deliberations from the jury. For weeks, Marilyn Mosby and her defense team have walked into the courthouse in Greenbelt with not much to say publicly. Ms. Mosby, how are you feeling today?
I'm blessed. How are you today?
If I get caught, I'm going to participate.
And after the split verdict from the jury convicting the former town prosecutor in Baltimore City on mortgage fraud, not much from her either. Are you happy with the decision to take the stand?
No comment. No comment.
Only cheers from her supporters as her car drives away. Despite prayer circles this week from Mosby's defenders,
a lawyer in the courtroom. Today we're asking that you be the lawyer, the judge, and the jury. Father God bless her.
the jury deciding Marilyn Mosby lied to mortgage lenders when she bought this condo in Longboat Key, Florida. It was this gift letter, the jury said, that sunk Marilyn Mosby. During testimony, she says her mortgage broker told her she was $5,000 short in order to clinch a favorable interest rate. So her then husband, Baltimore City Council President Nick Mosby, says he offered to gift her the cash. During his testimony, Nick says he wanted to help. But the problem, Nick didn't have the funds. An FBI forensic accountant testified after combing through the couple's finances, the Mosbys shuffled the money around. This flowchart shown to the jury describes how it worked. It was Marilyn who actually took $5,000 she had in an account shared with her daughter and wired it to Nick. Nick then shuffled it between his savings and checking account before sending it off for the condo. From the beginning of the case, Marilyn Mosby's defense was she did not knowingly lie on the mortgage applications. Rather, she blamed Nick for hiding the mail and hiding the growing tax debt. On the stand, Nick telling the jury his comment about the $45,000 tax lien on the Mosby's home in Baltimore.
Have your tax issues been resolved?
Yes, thank you.
Was a lie, all in an attempt to conceal the problem from Marilyn. Marilyn also blaming her broker for omitting the tax debt on the mortgage applications, saying this box that's checked was filled out by the broker, not her. The jury seemingly believing that story, at least for one of the homes, since they found Marilyn not guilty on the mortgage fraud charge connected to the Kissimmee home. In closings, prosecutors hammering to the jury's Marilyn's criminal past in the same courtroom this trial unfolded in. Last November, a separate jury convicted Marilyn on 2 perjury counts, deciding she lied when she claimed a financial hardship to withdraw money from her retirement account penalty-free using a COVID-era exception. That money was then used to purchase both Florida properties. Maryland's federal public defender, James Wida. Mr. Wida? staying tight-lipped after the split verdict. Several delays, 2 years, and 2 trials later.
Ms. Mosby, what's your comment to the people of Baltimore?
Baltimore City's former state's attorney convicted on 3 of 4 federal charges.
Now, Marilyn and her team say they plan to appeal the perjury convictions, but nothing has been filed yet. Right now, it's unclear what their plan will be for the latest conviction.
And Mackenzie, what do we know about sentencing for both these guilty verdicts?
Well, right now we don't have any dates scheduled. The maximum penalty range significantly. For the perjury, she faces up to 5 years for each charge. For the mortgage fraud conviction, the max is 30 years in prison. Legal experts indicate the maximum is not likely, but how both sides approach this will likely be different.
But ultimately, the defense team is going to argue that these are the same transactions or similar transactions, and so the sentencing guidelines should be reduced. And the federal prosecutors are going to argue that they should be increased because they are separate incidents, separate transactions, and they should all be on top of one another. And so ultimately, the judge is going to decide how those sentencing guidelines are applied. I would suspect that we land somewhere between 18 and 24 months.
And Mackenzie, we know Nick Mosby opened himself up for potential legal trouble while testifying. All experts seem to agree on that. Do we know what will happen there?
Yeah, Mary, that is a big question. While he was on the stand, prosecutors made some pretty big allegations. Prosecutors claim Nick Mosby repeatedly committed perjury on his taxes. According to those same prosecutors, Nick claimed to have donated more than $20,000 to charity. And the same year, when he was behind on mortgage payments, had his car repossessed, and had his wages garnished to pay his student loans. While this whole investigation first launched more than 2 years ago at this point, federal investigators were looking at the Mosby's charitable donations. Church leaders were even questioned, but tax fraud charges were never brought. Now, we don't know what's going to happen with Nick in the future, but I can tell you we've talked to several political analysts who argue this could impact Nick Mosby's re-election efforts, especially with more scrutiny on Nick Mosby's finances as he continues to lead the city council and chair the city's spending board.
Yeah, well, I certainly hope that he's handling the city's finances and being a watchdog on the city finances better than he is in his own household. That's obvious, number one. Number two, it was fascinating to me that he testified without any sort of immunity. He certainly placed himself in significant jeopardy. Federal prosecutors certainly don't take lightly to individuals coming in and admitting to significant financial crimes on the witness stand. So it's going to be interesting to see how that all plays out.
Now, so far, Nick Mosby has not filed for re-election. The deadline for him to do so is Friday at 9 p.m. Live in the studio, Mackenzie Frost, Fox 45 News.
Mackenzie, thank you. Well, Fox 45 News first learned about the tax lien on the Mosby's home more than 3 years ago. In October of 2020, we pressed Nick Mosby on that lien several times. He repeatedly denied its existence.
Quick, you've denied the existence of your tax lien on your property multiple times?
I have not multiple times.
Can you say that this is the actual lien on your property?
You can talk to my attorney.
No, Tom, there's no lien placed on my home right now. There was never a lien on my property. This is not a lien on the property. There was never a lien that was rendered on my property. There is no lien on my property. There's never been a lien on my property. It's not a lien on my property. I don't have a property lien.
Well, Fox 45 News has been following the Mosby's financial concerns and this federal investigation since we learned about that lien. We first learned about the federal investigation in March of 2021. Federal agents issued subpoenas to several people surrounding the couple. We also learned about Marilyn Mosby's purchase of the Florida homes. Fast forward to January 13th, 2022, when Marilyn Mosby is federally indicted on 2 counts of perjury and 2 counts of mortgage fraud.
I mean, it's sad because Baltimore has a long history of corruption in our local government.
There's just a pattern of kind of saying she's a victim, and in reality, a lot of this stuff is her misbehavior on a personal level.
Mosby's trial was set for May of 2022, but it was delayed 3 times. The last delay came 1 year ago after her entire defense team withdrew from the case and she was assigned federal public defenders. The judge delayed the trial to allow Mosby's new defense team to get up to speed on the case. Now, Fox 45 News will continue to follow all the developments surrounding Marilyn Mosby's federal convictions. We'll keep you updated every step of the way. You can find all of our past reporting and any updates to come on our website, foxbaltimore.com. Be sure to download the Fox 45 mobile app to be sure you don't miss any breaking developments. Taxpayer advocates are raising concerns tonight about the state's Thrive Academy. It is set to receive more than $4.5 million as part of Governor Wes Moore's crime plan. The nonprofit academy provides incentives to at-risk youth who stay out of trouble, including work stipends and college tuition. Now, organizers say it is modeled off Baltimore's group violence reduction strategy, calling that program a huge success. But West Baltimore, where GVRS was piloted, ended last year as the deadliest district in the city. Concern over funding for some nonprofits stretched back months. A Fox 45 News investigation in December revealed more than 30 city organizations were not in good standing with the state, but still collected $65 million in tax dollars. Fox 45's Jeff Abel joins us live with an update on that investigation tonight. Jeff?
Well, since we first reported this, the numbers have improved, but it appears the city is still funneling millions of dollars to nonprofits who are not in good standing with the state.
This is such an amazing moment in time.
It was 6 months ago when the Downtown Partnership awarded a $50,000 boost grant to the women of Be More Empowered.
Fabulous, phenomenal, brilliant, and beautiful women of Be More Empowered.
Good morning. The December 14th, 2022 meeting of the Board of Estimates is now called to order.
6 months earlier, the city's Board of Estimates approved another $25,000 for the nonprofit.
The ayes have it. The routine agenda has been adopted.
The operations director at the nonprofit is now the mayor's fiancée. The organization, which helps inner city girls, solicits donations on its website. But the problem is, Be More Empowered is not in good standing with the state of Maryland. The Secretary of State has deemed the nonprofit's account delinquent.
And they're not supposed to be soliciting from people if they're not in compliance with the state.
And nothing seems to be slowing the demand for more funds. Take the Baltimore Civic Fund, where donors can contribute in one click on its website. It's also a major recipient of city funds.
They received $14 million of city funds over the course of the last 15 months.
But what donors don't always see is this: its delinquent status with the state of Maryland. Nonprofits are required to regularly register their financials with the state, or the state can bar them from soliciting donations.
These laws are designed to prevent public ripoffs, and that's why the state of Maryland has the law. It's just not being followed by many of these nonprofits.
Adam Andrzejewski of OpenTheBooks.com has spent months tracking nonprofits and says 21 of the top 100 nonprofits which have received city funding are not in good standing with the state of Maryland.
The vetting process at the city has to be broken. No one's asking the basic question, are you properly registered with the state, before we cut you millions of dollars worth of city money on grants.
Earlier today, we asked the mayor's office, why has the city of Baltimore granted money to nonprofits that are out of compliance with the state of Maryland? How does the city justify giving COVID-19 relief money to organizations that are not current with their filings? And does Baltimore City plan to cease funding for the Baltimore Civic Fund? We are still waiting on a reply.
Comptroller Bill Henry, he needs to crack down. He needs to get serious about making proper registration in the state of Maryland a viable part of the vetting process before he cuts these nonprofits a check.
While the law does prohibit delinquent nonprofits from soliciting donations, it does not bar them from accepting money from government agencies. We're live tonight. Jeff Abel, Fox 45 News.
Jeff, thank you. That brings us to our question of the day. Does the public deserve to know how nonprofits spend city dollars? So far, 98% of people who voted say yes. Head to foxbaltimore.com/vote to weigh in. Coming up on Fox 45 News at 10, a judge denies 2 requests from the team defending one of the Brooklyn Day mass shooting suspects. Why she says public safety outweighs the suspect's concerns. A funding fight in Cecil County as the school system may be forced to cut after-school programs and eliminate dozens of jobs. The war of words between school leaders and the county council.
A shift in our pattern is likely. We're going to see a storm system developing down into the Gulf, and it will likely head up the eastern seaboard. What impacts will it bring us here in Baltimore, and when will it arrive? We'll have all the details coming up.
And right after the break, millions of tax dollars meant for Maryland school children may be going unused. Project Baltimore looks into why this could be a bigger problem down the road.
Project Baltimore is sponsored by the Snyder Law Group. Don't just sue them, Snyder them.
Tonight, millions of your tax dollars intended to help children in Maryland's poorest schools are apparently not being spent. As Project Baltimore's Chris Papst explains, that's according to a report just released by the Inspector General for Education.
The Blueprint for Maryland's Future, also known as the Kerwin Plan, pumps billions of additional dollars into public education. But now an audit by the Inspector General for Education found millions of your tax dollars are going unused. When Maryland's legislature passed the Blueprint for Maryland's Future a few years ago, it created what's known as the Concentration of Poverty Grant Program. This grant provides extra funding to schools in areas with high rates of poverty and crime. The money is intended to give students extra resources, such as health care and other social services. Maryland has 24 public school systems. The IG report only looked at 8 of them and found $12.3 million in grant money was sent to those 8 school systems, but sat unused from fiscal years 2020 to 2022. How can this happen? The report blames the Maryland Department of Education for a lack of policies and training. In other words, school systems didn't know how to spend the money or what to spend it on. The report issues a series of recommendations for MSDE, which includes improving how it monitors the Concentration of Poverty grant to ensure the funds are not misallocated. MSDE says it has already implemented some of the recommendations, and it plans to implement almost all of the rest of them. According to the IG, addressing this problem now is especially important because in the coming years, billions of additional tax dollars will go into public education as a result of the Blueprint for Maryland's Future. Now, coming up on Wednesday, we're going to take a closer look at this report because if $12 million went unspent in just 8 school systems, how big of a problem is this statewide? I'm Chris Papst, and this is Project Baltimore.
Project Baltimore wants to hear from you. Do you have a story to share about your child's education or a concern you'd like our team to investigate? Call the tip line on your screen or send an email to projectbaltimore@foxbaltimore.com. You can also find us on social media.
This is somebody who's proven that, they cannot be out in society with everyone else.
A judge denies 2 requests from the defense team of a Brooklyn Day mass shooting suspect. Why the demands were rejected.
Shocking revelations about a wave of crimes committed by migrants. I'm Christine Frizzell with news on new arrests and questions about what happens next.
A lot coming our way on our weather headlines. It's been a very quiet stretch for a very long time, and now we're getting ready to see some changes. Temperatures are on the rise. Could we really hit 60? We're going to talk about that, plus the active weather pattern returning. I think we could see some weekend impacts. We'll detail that out coming up.
Well, I've got my fingers crossed for 60. We would love it. Here's a live look over Towson tonight. Stay with us. We'll be right back. A federal court has rejected former President Donald Trump's claim for immunity from prosecution for alleged crimes committed while he was president. Trump has argued he had presidential immunity and his conduct to overturn the election fell within his official duties. He's pleaded not guilty to 4 criminal charges, including conspiring to defraud the United States. Trump's legal team has until Monday to appeal today's ruling. Let's go live to Capitol Hill, where a House impeachment vote against Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas has failed. A group of Republican lawmakers tried to argue Mayorkas violated federal law with his southern border policies in recent months. Democrats called the vote a sham, saying Republicans never had any evidence to support their claims. Police in New York City sounding the alarm about violent crimes said to be committed by migrants. National correspondent Christine Frizzell looks into the issue, and we warn you some of these images may be disturbing.
Police say the victims are often women, like the one seen in this horrific video, being dragged by migrants on a moped. Police say it's one incident in a much larger phone-snatching criminal enterprise in which suspect Victor Parra sends out WhatsApp messages detailing what types of cell phones he's looking for.
These thieves would ride up behind their victims on the sidewalk, steal their property, and then make their getaway.
Chief Detective Joe Kenny says most of those taking part live in New York City's migrant shelter system and make hundreds of dollars per stolen phone. Several suspects involved were arrested Monday as law enforcement faces new challenges in this wave of migrant crime.
They're essentially ghost criminals. No criminal history, no photos, no cell phone, no social media. Sometimes we're even unclear on a name or a date of birth.
Another major arrest Monday of suspects involved in this video of New York City police officers assaulted in Times Square. The suspects, also migrants, were initially arrested and then set free without bail, to the shock of many.
A sanctuary city should not mean protecting criminals.
And a 2-week operation led by Immigration and Customs Enforcement that just wrapped up led to the arrest of 171 undocumented migrants with previous criminal charges and convictions, what former CBP head Mark Morgan calls the tip of the iceberg.
In the past 36 months, CBP has encountered over 90,000 criminals trying to illegally enter our border, including murderers, rapists, pedophiles, aggravated felons, and gang members.
Of course, the vast majority of migrants are not committing crimes and make the dangerous journey to get here out of fear and desperation. But their ability to be let in and remain in the country is now at the center of debate in Washington and nationwide. I'm Christine Frizzau reporting.
And that brings us to our national question of the day. Do you think those arrested for violent crime should be released without bail? So far, 97% of people who voted say no. To make your voice heard, head to foxbaltimore.com, click on that Pulse tab. And last night we asked, who do you think would do a better job handling the economy, the border crisis, and foreign policy? 21% said President Biden, 79% said former President Trump.
Those students, they're our future, and we're going to cut their success short.
A funding fight in Cecil County as the school system's budget is falling $20 million short. Scenes from tonight's rally as school leaders and the county councilor are blaming each other. And Fox 45 News takes a closer look at Governor Moore's crime messaging ahead of tomorrow's State of the State address. Why some say there's been a reversal in the governor's tone. We are continuing to follow the breaking news out of Greenbelt. Former Baltimore City State's Attorney Marilyn Mosby found guilty on one of 2 counts in her federal mortgage fraud trial. Throughout the trial, the Mosby's defense team tried to convince the jury her ex-husband, City Council President Nick Mosby, hid financial information from her for years, and she didn't knowingly lie on any mortgage application. Attorney Kurt Nachman, who's not affiliated with the case, joined us on Fox 45 News at 6. He says he is slightly surprised by the split verdict.
Clearly, the jurors were listening, that they keyed in on the one particular note, and that maybe they did believe Ms. Mosby's testimony, that she really did trust at the time her husband was taking care of the finances. Obviously, did not believe them at all with regard to the gift note that sort of highlighted that one purchase of the Longbow Key property.
U.S. Attorney for Maryland Eric Barron released a statement on today's verdict saying, "We humbly respect the court's considered rulings, opposing counsel's zealous advocacy, and the wisdom of both jury verdicts in this case, and we remain focused on our mission to uphold the rule of law." Mosby was found guilty on 2 counts of perjury in a previous federal trial. She plans to appeal all 3 convictions and will be sentenced at a later date. Fox 45 News will continue to follow these breaking developments, bring you any updates on air and online at foxbaltimore.com. The 18-year-old facing more than 60 charges in connection to the Brooklyn Day mass shooting will remain in an adult facility, despite a push from defense attorneys to have him held at a juvenile facility. Tristan Jackson's charges include more than 24 counts of attempted murder and conspiracy to commit murder. A judge also ruled court proceedings related to the case will remain open. The defense argues that will put Jackson at risk and taint the jury pool, while prosecutors say sealing the documents would control how the case is covered in the media, which isn't the court's role. Legal expert Eurypsy Morgan says the people of Brooklyn deserve transparency.
Feeling safe again and knowing that the criminal justice system is doing everything it can to make sure that the perpetrators of that crime are being dealt with effectively.
Police say Jackson is seen several times on surveillance footage firing shots into the crowd. They also say GPS coordinates from an ankle monitor Jackson was wearing related to a previous crime placed him at the scene on the night of the shooting. Well, these developments come as state Democrats are unveiling a comprehensive juvenile crime plan, promising tougher consequences for young offenders and more accountability within the Department of Juvenile Services. The plan does not include, though, any changes to the Child Interrogation Protection Act, which provides guidelines for when police can question juveniles 13 and under. Democratic Senator Jill Carter and Republican delegate Kathy Szeliga at odds over that aspect of the plan.
Any child in the state of Maryland under current law that is accused of an act of violence, a felony act of violence, is subject now to both detention, charges, and incarceration, and restriction in a secure facility. I don't like to call it incarceration. So it's not true to say that the law currently doesn't hold any kid accountable. But what I do like is finally to hold adults accountable.
That is not true, Senator Carter.
Read the
you know
law.
it. The
Read the law.
state's attorneys have come forward and said they cannot hold juveniles under 13 accountable under the current law unless it's first-degree murder or a first-degree sex
All you have to do
offense.
is read the law.
We know that's not true, and the Senate does not work. That's why we're
Carjacking
here,
is
and
definitely
that's what
eligible.
Governor Moore has said.
Nobody said that. If they did, they didn't read the law.
Well, Governor Moore firmly supports the plan, which some say is a shift in his crime messaging from when he first took office. Fox 45's Keith Daniels looks into the governor's change of tone and what it could mean ahead of his State of the State address tomorrow.
Well, since the governor took office about a year ago, state officials report Maryland has seen a 220% spike in youth handgun crimes and a 63% rise in car thefts, many of them committed by juveniles, police say. Just a couple of staggering stats, and tonight, a closer look at the governor's crime-fighting messaging. On the night before the day of Governor Wes Moore's State of the State address, a look.
We're beginning to see a governor showing real leadership.
At what some political observers believe,
it's always best to pivot quickly, but explain why.
to be a change of direction for the governor's stance on crime, notably juvenile crime. In the past, he's been seemingly non-committal or more lax about it, like seen here this past summer.
The false narratives of some politicians who say that every urban area is a city in crisis.
But now it seems there's a pivot when it comes to Moore's crime-fighting messaging. There was no missing it when he delivered his public safety plan last month.
The hallmark of what I hope to see in any juvenile justice legislation that's going to make it to my desk can be summarized in one word: accountability. We need accountability. Accountable. Accountable.
His directive now, especially after we've seen legislators, including leading Democrats recently in Annapolis, releasing crime bills that crack down on youth offenders. Political commentator Armstrong Williams this week on Fox 45's Morning News, and political analyst John Deedy weigh in.
He had to pivot because one of the things is a lot of the legislators, especially from Baltimore City, have been frustrated by the crime in the city that's occurred with youth violence and a variety of things.
So the governor is finally emerging as a law and order governor because it's common sense. You cannot allow these young people to believe that they can manipulate the law.
The other thing is regarding crime, if you're going to run for future higher office, you've got to show that you got the pelts to be tough on crime. And you've got to show, if you're a governor, that you're dealing with the crime issue.
And of course, the governor is expected to detail his administration's progress on many of the issues in Maryland, including public safety. Reporting tonight, Keith Daniels, Fox 45 News.
Well, the parents of Papa LaPere appeared in front of the House Judiciary Committee in Annapolis today. They are pushing for changes to the state's early release system for convicted sex offenders. Their daughter was murdered last fall in her Baltimore apartment, and police arrested convicted sex offender Jason Billingsley in connection to that killing.
Pava did very well in her very short life. So now it's time for someone else to carry the torches that she carried. One of them was for equity, another for justice. So that's why we're here.
And our goal is to keep those torches lit.
The suspect was originally convicted in 2013, but released on good behavior credits in 2022. This new bill would make it more difficult for certain offenders to earn these credits.
This bill sends a clear message that sentences for such heinous crimes will be fully enforced, and convicted individuals will face significant consequences for their actions.
The bill now moves to a second reading. LaPere's parents say they will also be in Annapolis on Thursday, testifying on another piece of legislation in their daughter's name. Weekly recycling pickup is set to return next month in Baltimore as the Department of Public Works says it has expanded its workforce and upgraded its fleet of garbage trucks. Since July, DPW says it's hired dozens of drivers and solid waste workers, and city leaders are also implementing new technology that will make pickup routes more efficient. This follows years of complaints over inconsistent pickup. Weekly pickup has largely been on hold since the start of the pandemic due to major staffing and equipment shortages within DPW. A fight for funding tonight in Cecil County as the school system could be forced into major budget cuts next year. Fox 45's Jessica Babb was at a community rally tonight, taking us through the calls for action.
Parents, students, and educators came out in droves, packing the front lawn and the parking lot of the Cecil County Administration Building. The school superintendent says if they don't get more funding from the county, they could be forced to significantly cut positions and programs. But county officials are pointing the finger back at the school system. It's a message to Cecil County Executive Danielle Hornberger, loud and clear.
We believe we deserve that money.
With students leading the charge.
We as students, we wanted to make a difference. We wanted to use our voices.
Based on budget projections, Cecil County Public Schools could be facing a shortage of $20 million for next year.
It's going to affect everybody. Those students, they're our future, and we're going to cut their success short.
I firmly believe that the district is being shortchanged.
They could have to cut more than 150 positions.
Mine is on the chopping block. And as far as our family, that's going to hit our pockets so hard.
And programs like choir, band, JV, and middle school sports, AP exams, and gifted and talented programs, among others.
It's going to affect my senior year drastically.
This is not just extracurricular. This is also her future.
It's going to be detrimental.
For the last 3 years, the school system has received maintenance of effort funding from the county, which is the minimum amount. But the superintendent says before 2020, the county had given them more than that.
Historically, they've always been a modest amount above the maintenance of effort, and since 2020, it's really just flatlined. Our worry is that there's going to happen a fourth year.
With less from the county, now that grants like the federal COVID funding are ending, and with other requirements and restrictions of the blueprint for Maryland's future legislation, the school system is seeing the shortfall.
I think the county has allowed their own fund balance to grow while we were receiving the federal money.
But County Executive Danielle Hornberger is clapping back, posting this video to Facebook saying the school system hasn't given all the information about how they're spending money.
He spends our hard-earned dollars without accountability, responsibility, or transparency.
In a statement saying, quote, "We agree the school system should not cut over 100 teacher positions and important academic and athletic programs. It is irresponsible for the superintendent to gut our school system while stoking fear among our teachers, parents, and students. I call on him to do his job, and if he can't do his job, he should resign."
Like you, I want to fund our educational needs to the fullest, but I can't wave a magic wand and do everything that I want.
They're pointing the finger at us. And again, I stand by what we do. I stand by our people.
The superintendent says they have provided the county with their budget information. Right now, the school board is crafting the budget, and they will present it to the county executive at the end of the month. In Elkton, Jessica Babb, Fox 45 News.